These words, reflecting the psychological insight of Carl Jung, capture a modern affliction that many experience but few discuss openly. That peculiar emptiness where activities that once brought joy now feel hollow, where enthusiasm fades into routine, and where the vibrant colors of life seem to have dulled to shades of gray. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you felt truly excited about something? Not just momentarily amused or briefly distracted, but deeply, genuinely enthused. Can you remember what that sensation felt like in your body? That spark of anticipation, that fullness of being present. Perhaps you're experiencing it right now. That strange disconnect where nothing quite satisfies. The playlists that once energized you now just background noise. The foods that delighted your palate now just sustenance. The people whose company you cherished now conversations you endure rather than enjoy. If you're nodding in recognition, you're not alone. This experience has a particular texture to it, not quite sadness, not exactly boredom, but a peculiar flatness that spreads across experience like a fog, muting everything it touches. Jung understood something profound about the human psyche, that this loss of joy isn't simply boredom or fatigue, but often a call from the deeper self, signaling that something essential has been neglected within. It's as if the psyche has a wisdom of its own, withdrawing the capacity for enjoyment when we've strayed too far from what truly matters. What if I told you that this feeling, this absence of joy that may be haunting your days, isn't something to merely push past or distract yourself from? What if it's actually a messenger, arriving with an invitation in hand? An invitation to something deeper than the temporary pleasures you've lost touch with. Have you ever noticed how one day, seemingly without warning, the things that once brought you pleasure no longer do? Take a moment to think about your own daily rituals. That morning coffee you once savored. Can you still taste its complexity, or has it become just a habitual caffeine delivery? The books that used to transport you to other worlds, do you still get lost in their pages? Or do you find your mind wandering after just a few paragraphs? Those gatherings with friends that used to fill you with energy and laughter, do you now check the time, calculating when you can politely leave? This experience often arrives silently, gradually, not announcing itself with fanfare, but settling in like a fog that slowly obscures the landscape of enjoyment. You might recognize this in your own life, that almost imperceptible shift where one day you realize weeks have passed since you felt genuinely excited about anything. At first, it's easy to dismiss. I'm just tired, you might think, scrolling through another feed, watching another show, ordering another product. Things will feel normal again once I get some rest. You might even blame yourself. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be grateful for what I have? But I want to ask you, what if this feeling persists? What if days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and still nothing seems to spark that familiar sense of joy? What have you tried to reignite that spark in your own life? In our modern world, the common response is distraction. When nothing feels enjoyable, the instinct is to seek more intense stimulation, louder music, stronger flavors, faster entertainment, newer purchases. The digital age offers endless distractions, each promising to reignite that spark of pleasure that seems to have gone missing. Look around your own space. How many devices, subscriptions, and possessions have you accumulated in pursuit of that elusive feeling of enjoyment? Yet paradoxically, this pursuit often deepens the problem. The more frantically one chases enjoyment, the more elusive it becomes. The more options for entertainment available, the less satisfying each one feels. Have you experienced this yourself? That moment when you realize you have access to more entertainment than any human in history, yet somehow nothing appeals to you? Something fundamental is being overlooked. What Jung understood, and what our distraction-filled culture often forgets, is that this feeling, This absence of joy often serves as a message from the unconscious. It's not simply a problem to be solved with more distraction or stimulation. Rather, it's a symptom pointing to something deeper. Consider the seasons of nature that surround us. There are times of growth and abundance, but also necessary periods of dormancy and rest. The tree that appears lifeless in winter isn't dying. It's conserving energy, turning inward, preparing for a new cycle of growth. I invite you to consider, what if this feeling that nothing is fun anymore is your psyche's winter? Not a permanent state, but a necessary phase of turning inward. What might be germinating within you during this fallow period, if only given the space and patience to develop? In a culture that celebrates constant productivity and positivity, these natural cycles are rarely honored. The pressure to always be happy, always be engaged, always be enjoying life creates a peculiar kind of suffering when these feelings naturally ebb. Think about the messages you receive daily, from social media, from advertising, from the people around you. How often do they reinforce the idea that constant enjoyment is the norm and anything less is failure? The inability to enjoy becomes not just an experience but a personal failing. Another way in which you feel you aren't measuring up to expectations. But here's a different perspective I want to offer you. What if, instead of frantically attempting to escape this feeling, you were to sit with it? What if, rather than seeing it as a problem to fix, you approached it as a message to decode? Try this experiment. The next time you notice that sense of emptiness or lack of enthusiasm, instead of immediately reaching for your phone or some other distraction, simply sit with the feeling for 5 full minutes. Notice where you feel it in your body. Is it a heaviness in your chest? A tightness in your throat? A numbness in your limbs? Just observe it, without trying to change it or escape from it. Often, when nothing external brings satisfaction, it's because something internal is calling for attention. The psyche, like any complex system, seeks balance. When life becomes too external, too focused on achievement and acquisition, too disconnected from meaning and depth, the capacity for joy naturally diminishes, not as punishment, but as correction, a signal that something essential has been neglected. In the depths of winter, the seed doesn't force itself to bloom. It waits, it rests, it gathers strength. Look at your own life for a moment. Where might you be forcing growth when dormancy is needed? Where are you demanding joy when reflection is what's called for? Where are you filling space with noise when silence might speak more clearly? Similarly, when facing this loss of joy, perhaps the answer isn't to force enjoyment or distract from the emptiness, but to honor it as a necessary phase, a time for reflection, reassessment, and reconnection with neglected aspects of the self. Perhaps what appears as the absence of fun is actually the presence of an opportunity, an invitation to discover a deeper kind of fulfillment that lies beyond mere entertainment or distraction. This experience of finding no joy in anything reflects Jung's understanding of the soul's need for wholeness. In his work, Jung emphasized that psychological health doesn't come from avoiding darkness or difficulty, but from integrating all aspects of the self, the light and the shadow, the conscious and unconscious elements that make us whole. When was the last time you felt truly whole? Not perfect, not optimized, not curated for others' approval, but genuinely, authentically yourself. When did you last feel that sense of internal harmony, where you weren't fighting against parts of yourself? When life becomes unbalanced, too focused on external achievements, too disconnected from deeper values, too far removed from authentic expression, the psyche often responds with this peculiar emptiness. Joy disappears not because there's something wrong with the external world, but because the connection to one's deeper self has been severed. In our modern context, this phenomenon has only intensified. The constant barrage of information, The pressure to present a curated version of life on social media, the emphasis on productivity and achievement above all else, these forces can gradually disconnect us from what Jung would call the soul's needs. Take a moment to reflect on your own daily habits. How much time do you spend cultivating your online image versus tending to your inner life? How often do you measure your worth by metrics, likes, follows, salary, status, rather than by meaning, purpose, or authentic connection? Think about the everyday objects that surround you right now. The smartphone in your pocket, or perhaps in your hand as you watch this. It promises connection, but how often does it leave you feeling more isolated? The streaming services you subscribe to offer endless entertainment options that somehow still leave you feeling bored. The comfortable home filled with possessions that somehow fails to feel like a true sanctuary. When these things no longer bring satisfaction, it's easy to blame the things themselves, to seek newer, better versions, believing the problem lies in the objects rather than in our relationship to them. How many times have you thought, "I'll be happier when I get the new phone," or "If I could just afford that upgrade, things would be better"? But notice what happens after each purchase, each upgrade, how quickly that satisfaction fades, how soon the joy of acquisition gives way to familiar emptiness. But what if the loss of joy in everyday experiences is actually an invitation? An invitation to look beyond the surface of life, to question whether one's existence has become too shallow, too predictable, too removed from what truly matters. I invite you to try this visualization. Close your eyes for a moment if you're in a safe place to do so. Imagine stripping away everything external that defines you, your job title, your possessions, your social media presence, your achievements. When all of that is gone, what remains? Who are you at your core? What values and connections sustain you when everything else falls away? Jung believed that this journey toward wholeness, what he called individuation, isn't a luxury, but a necessity for psychological health. The loss of joy you might be experiencing could be the first step on this journey. Your psyche's way of saying enough to a life that has become disconnected from its deeper purpose. Consider the possibility that this emptiness you feel isn't something to fix or overcome as quickly as possible, but rather a guide, pointing you toward the parts of yourself that have been neglected, the values that have been compromised, the authentic expression that has been suppressed in favor of what's expected or rewarded. What might be trying to grow in the garden of your life? What seeds of possibility are germinating in this winter of your joy? What might emerge if you honor this period of emptiness rather than rushing to fill it with more of the same distractions that failed to fulfill you in the first place? Think about your own life for a moment. Can you remember a time when activities you once loved suddenly felt empty? Perhaps it was a hobby that used to absorb you completely, now just another task. That musical instrument in the corner of your room, gathering dust. That sketchbook with only the first few pages filled. That garden you no longer tend with care. Or relationships that once energized you, now feeling more like obligations. The friend whose texts you leave unanswered. The family gatherings you attend out of duty rather than desire. The conversations where you find yourself nodding automatically, your mind elsewhere. Or achievements that should bring satisfaction, somehow leaving you feeling hollow instead. That promotion you worked so hard for. That goal weight you finally reached. That milestone you once thought would change everything. Yet here you are, achievement in hand, wondering why you don't feel what you expected to feel. Take a moment right now to bring to mind something specific from your own experience. An activity, relationship, or achievement that once brought you genuine joy, but now feels empty. Visualize it clearly. Remember how it felt when it was meaningful to you. Notice the contrast with how it feels now. What did you do when faced with this feeling? Did you seek more intense distractions? Another scroll, another purchase, another binge? Did you blame yourself for not being grateful enough? I should be happy with this, you might have told yourself. What's wrong with me that I can't appreciate what I have? Did you push the feeling away, hoping it would pass on its own, filling every moment with noise and activity to avoid confronting the emptiness? I want to invite you into a different possibility. What if this emptiness you're experiencing isn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be curious about? What if it contains a wisdom that your conscious mind hasn't yet recognized? Now imagine approaching this experience differently. Imagine seeing it not as a problem to solve, but as a message to understand. Consider taking out a journal right now or opening a notes app and asking yourself these questions. What might this feeling be trying to tell you? What aspects of yourself might be calling for attention? What deeper needs might be going unmet in your current way of living? Perhaps there's a creative impulse being stifled by routine. Perhaps there's a value being compromised in pursuit of success as others define it. Perhaps there's a relationship that needs honest conversation rather than polite avoidance. Perhaps there's a path you once longed to explore, set aside for more practical concerns. In your daily life this week, I challenge you to notice the moments when you're seeking joy but finding emptiness instead. Set an intention right now to watch for those moments. In those moments, try something counterintuitive. Instead of turning away from the emptiness, turn toward it. Instead of reaching for your phone, sit with the feeling for just 30 seconds. Instead of blaming yourself, get curious about what's happening beneath the surface. Listen to it. Ask what it might be trying to tell you about the path you're on, about the choices you're making, about the aspects of yourself you might be neglecting. You might be surprised by what answers arise when you genuinely listen, because often, paradoxically, it's only by fully acknowledging this loss of joy that true joy eventually returns, not as a constant state, but as authentic moments of connection with something deeper than mere pleasure or entertainment. Think of someone you know who seems to have a genuine zest for life, not a forced positivity or curated happiness, but an authentic engagement with living. Chances are, this person isn't someone who avoids difficult emotions or chases endless distractions. More likely, it's someone who has learned to integrate all aspects of their experience, the light and the shadow, into a life of meaning and purpose. What seeds of authentic joy might be waiting to be planted in the soil of your current emptiness? What new growth might be possible once you stop fighting against what is and start listening to what wants to emerge? The feeling that nothing is fun anymore, not just a personal failing or temporary mood, but perhaps a necessary invitation to depth in a world that often celebrates the superficial. A call to remember that true joy doesn't come from constant stimulation or endless options, but from meaningful connection with others, with nature, with one's own deeper self. As we come to the end of our journey together, I want to ask you, what parts of this exploration have resonated with your own experience? Has there been a moment where you felt seen, where something clicked into place? Take a breath and notice what's arising in you right now. Jung famously said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Think about those words for a moment. What makes self-acceptance so frightening? What parts of yourself have you been reluctant to acknowledge or embrace? Perhaps it is in this acceptance of all our complexity, of our need for meaning beyond pleasure, of the natural cycles of engagement and withdrawal, that we find not just the return of joy, but something richer, a life that feels authentically lived, with all its shadows and light, its winters and springs. Before we part ways, I invite you to reflect on a question. What would your life look like if you stopped fighting against the natural rhythms of your psyche? If instead of demanding constant happiness, you honored the full spectrum of your experience, what might open up for you? The next time you feel that nothing brings you joy, consider that this might not be a problem to fix, but a doorway to pass through. On the other side, maybe not constant happiness, but something more valuable, a life of greater depth, authenticity, and meaning. A life where joy, when it returns, is not just momentary pleasure, but profound connection with what truly matters. I have a small challenge for you. Sometime in the coming week, when you notice that feeling of emptiness or lack of joy, instead of your habitual response, try something different. Spend 5 minutes writing about what might be beneath that feeling. What deeper part of you might be trying to get your attention? What value or need might be going unmet? And if you found value in this exploration, share it with someone who might be struggling with their own loss of joy. Sometimes the most meaningful connection comes through shared understanding of life's deeper currents. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. How has the loss of joy shown up in your life? What have you discovered on the other side of that experience? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Remember, in a world that often treats emptiness as a problem to be solved, there's radical wisdom in recognizing it as a teacher to be heeded. Your psyche knows what it needs. Sometimes the most courageous thing is simply to listen. Thank you for journeying with me through this exploration of meaning, joy, and the wisdom that sometimes hides in their absence. Until next time, may you find the courage to embrace all seasons of your soul. And that's a wrap for today. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time.